Josh here, and welcome to this installment of Rules of the Realm. Today we are going to cover Intercept. Probably one of the more confusing abilities for anyone that is playing Sorcery. And yet Intercept is actually one of the most fundamentally important rules in Sorcery in relation to the grid. But it doesn't get used very much. And yet without it, Sorcery would be a completely different game. So what is Intercept? Intercept states that when an enemy uses the move and attack basic ability, finishes that movement and does not attack, any of your units there that are untapped can tap to intercept the unit and fight it. Seems pretty clear. All right, close of the video, we're done. No, this wording is actually very, very particular. So let's go through each part of it to discuss exactly when you can intercept. So that first part, when an enemy unit uses the move and attack basic ability. That's very important. Move and attack basic ability. This means that you cannot intercept any other type of movement. So if that enemy is being moved via tactical move, via teleport, sorry, your units cannot intercept because that movement was not by the move and attack basic ability. So that's very important. That's probably, that one is the one that will really trip people up because people think, oh, they moved via one of these other magical effects. They were teleported. They use tactical move. They use flanking maneuver, whatever it is. None of those can be intercepted. Only units using the move and attack basic ability can be intercepted. All right, now let's move on to the next part. Stops and does not use its attack. Now, the attack part's pretty simple, right? Well, okay, choosing not to attack. Yeah, that's clear. Yes, it is. But it's the stops, the finalizes its movement. That's important in the next part of Intercept. You can only intercept at the final location. So if a unit has multiple steps of movement due to having movement plus X from some effect, you cannot intercept any of the prior steps. The only step that can be intercepted is the final step. Now, this was a change. Previously, you actually could intercept any step from the move and attack basic ability. That is no longer the case. The only step that can be intercepted when using the move and attack basic ability is the final step, the final location, and the opponent has to choose not to attack. Then at that point, your untapped units there can intercept. So that's point 2, right? So we got point 1, must be move and attack ability, must be where the unit stops, where it finalizes its movement, okay? So now we're in the last part. The last part has the last key thing that we need to read. Your units at the location that are untapped can tap to intercept and fight the unit. You say, oh, unit. Okay, so your units that are untapped. That's right. You can intercept with multiple units. Well, that's cool. So if I got 2 units at the site, they can both tap to fight this thing and, potentially knock down a bigger enemy, and hopefully you only lose one of yours instead of both of yours. Don't want to lose card advantage. So, yes, multiple units can intercept, but the key is only units at the final location can intercept. So your opponent must choose to end their move and attack basic movement at a site where you have untapped units that can intercept. Well, why would they do that? Well, that's a good question. But before we move on to that, they have to be at the site. Unlike the defend basic ability, where you're able to defend an attack and get one step of movement, you don't get that with intercept. Your opponent must finalize their movement at a location where your untapped units are already at. They can't move to intercept. It has to be exactly there. So, those are the 3 key points. They must use the move and attack basic ability. They must end their movement. So, prior steps can't be intercepted. Only the final step can be intercepted. And it must be at a location where you have untapped units. That is what must occur in order for an intercept to even be possible. Okay, so we've hit all that. So why would you do this? Like, a smart opponent isn't going to ever let this happen. They're not going to move intentionally to a site where I have untapped units so I can intercept them. So why do we care about this rule? We care because knowing that your opponent isn't going to make those moves. And that's why this rule is so important to sorcery. It affects the grid and how your opponent will move on the grid. Knowing that if you have untapped enemy units in a certain place, you can control how they move. And that's why intercept, as a rule, even though we rarely see it, and which, because we rarely see it, kind of leads to a lot of confusion about when it can be used, it determines how your opponent can move on the board. It allows you to funnel them in certain ways, to funnel their units where you want to within your realm. So that's why we have intercept. Yeah, it doesn't happen a lot. Now maybe there's a savvy play where like your opponent's like, oh, I'm going to bait them. I'm going to actually move this here so that they will intercept, because if they do that, I'll be able to do this fun, savvy thing, whatever it is. You don't know, you know. But by doing that, all right, yes, this works, and so they're able to gain some advantage. That's typically when you would see someone intentionally allow themselves to be intercepted. But it's still a fundamental and important rule to the game because it lets you control and funnel where their units go. Now, there are a couple caveats to intercept that I do want to cover here at the end. First, airborne units. Airborne units can only be intercepted by other units with airborne or units with ranged. So, if an airborne unit finalizes its movement at from the move and attack ability at a location where you have a boss troll or any other unit without airborne or ranged, that unit can just be there and cannot be intercepted. So that's one of the huge advantages of airborne. They have more mobility. It's more difficult to actually intercept them. Next, units with stealth. Units with stealth cannot be intercepted. So those sneaky little guys that are moving around, you can't intercept them. So they can get to where they need to be, and there's really not much you can do to them in terms of, well, there's nothing you can do to them in terms of interception. They can just go where they please because they have stealth. Now, before we close this one out, the big key things about intercept. You can only intercept the move and attack basic ability. You can only intercept at the final location where the movement from the move and attack basic ability ends, and you can only intercept with units at the location of the final movement of the move and attack basic ability. If you keep those three things in mind, intercept is very easy. That concludes this installment of the Rules of the Realm series. I hope you enjoyed this particular topic, and if not, hopefully a future topic will be something more to your liking and you will gain some knowledge about sorcery that you did not know about in that future installment. Other than that, we're done for today. So, as always, keep on contesting the realm!